Would you mind maybe coming over here as well? We'll just block the entrance. We learn history from conflicts. World War I, World War II, this agreement, the other agreement. This is the only way that in every country we learn history. And this is very reductive. And I think that looking at non-state archives gives you an opportunity to think about it in a more layered and complex way.
There is this sense of different kinds of lines, geographical line, the lines of these drawings, the lines of marked territories through geographical cartography. Tell us about that, because it's a consistent concern of your practice right from the start, really.
Because I'm interested in traces, I'm most interested in the gaps between the lines. Because no matter how many lines you do in geography, there is always a gap between each line that is missing information. I started to think about mapping of plants, of mountains, naming it, claiming it, as a way of also controlling it. This is the first thing that when the empires, the British Empire, the French and so on, when they went to Africa, to Asia, and the Levant, one of the goals was to map it as detailed as possible. I did a lot of research in different archives, the British Archive, the American Colonial Archive, about this specific location named Susita, Kalat el-Hassan, that this is where the film is photographed. And I tried to kind of refine the locations that the photographer were 100 years ago. So you always have this kind of like the image of the contemporary video and the image of the archive, and sometimes it's really the same perspective. And I think, I'm telling the story, I'm trying to tell the story of the site with almost no text, just at the beginning, but with no text, just by different ways of filming. So it starts with this like postcard images, very much colonial perspective of the Holy Land as a biblical site, and then there is no movement of camera, but there's movement of light, so it's like a watch tower, and it relates to the history of different armies that went to this archaeological site. Among them, of course, the Syrian army that built a military base on top of the archaeological site, and then the Israelis that built a military base on top of that. And then the cameras start to move, and it's like between an animal looking to hunt and maybe a soldier, but then a group of bats that we thought doesn't exist anymore. They took over the military base, the bats, and they live there. So we recorded the sound. You hear it throughout the movie, surrounding us throughout the night when we were filming.
And you sort of make comparisons effectively with them hunting for prey, and kind of there's a sort of eerie feeling of surveillance about the whole film right from the start, right? It's about the natural world and the kind of control, human control that's placed upon it.
I have nothing to add.
One of the things that I'm really struck by is that the paper is really beautiful. It's this kind of archival paper, and these are photographs. I think one of the things is that they appear potentially as drawings or as prints, perhaps, but this is absolutely photography that we're looking at here.
This series around us of the plants, they are based on a botanical guide made in the 60s by the Hebrew University, and it's an attempt to map all the plants. The title is Flora Palestina. While I was flipping at the book, there's like a fragile moment that you see one drawing and then you see the other one. Your mind kind of like mixes them together. And I want to freeze this moment. And I take each page of the book and I place it on a light box made out of paper and photograph it from above. And then it kind of creates this kind of hybrid of the two drawings. So what you see at the front, which is very sharp, is the drawing that was on top. And what you see at the back, that is a bit faded and more gray, was the drawing from the back. But while I was looking at the negatives, there were color negatives. This is the colors that I saw. So it's not a manipulation of color. This is just the book was faded, became a bit yellowish, and then at the back it was a bit blue, so it got this orange
And tell us about your selection process, because it's actually a sort of textual process as opposed to an image-based process, right?
I mean, the exhibition in general, I think, deals with this meeting point between nature and human. And in many countries, especially new nations, as a part of like this process of building identity, you kind of personalize nature. You give it like names and titles that relates to your own history. And in this book, Flora Palestina, they gave to many plants names that relate to their locations. For example, Syrian antelope horn, or you have Egyptian desert flower, and so on and so on. So just by reading the names of each plant, you see how Israel really built a territory and identity, like marking borders. And borders, maybe it's the second subject of the show.
Amid Imperial Grids.
Yes.
There's another lovely title. It's a really, really, again, everything here is so multi-layered and so fascinating. These were, again, you worked with archival maps, but you did a lot to them, didn't you?
They are based on maps from 1885 that were made by Gottlieb Schumacher, German topographer. He was the first to create maps in modern time of the Levant. On these maps, the British Empire and the French base their maps. And I chose the regions that are between British Palestine, which was Palestine and also Jordan, and the French Levant, which was Lebanon and Syria of today. There was like a pink border between them, it's called the pink line. And I removed all human marks from the map. So it's like names of villages, mountains, roads. It's almost apocalyptic to look at them. I think now it looks like brain, it looks like flesh, it looks like something.
It really reminded me of almost of medieval illustrations of hell or something like that. The fire and we're coming to the end now, but I wanted to ask about, you know, when you think about a body of work and about the sort of textures that we have around us here, and to what extent you want to complicate your material. You, in a way, you don't want people to come out with easy assumptions or easy narrative readings of the work, that somehow it's about complication.
You know, when you tell a story, and then I'll ask you to tell the same story a day after, you will tell it a bit differently, and again and again and again. I think that in that sense, art should function like poetry, that you can kind of find a new meaning every time that you read it. This is terrible to say as an artist, but I'm not necessarily convinced that I'm that interested in the art as an object. I'm more interested in the conversation that you develop with it.
It's a great way to end. Dor, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.